The old woman stood at the UPS counter, a pen trembling between her fingers. Behind the glass, a notary slid a blue poster toward her and said softly, "If you need a private conversation, say, 'I'd like to verify my signature in the back.'" For a second, the world held its breath. Her niece smiled too brightly. The son-in-law, tight shirt, realtor grin, tapped the pen closer. "Just sign, Aunt," he said. "It's for taxes." But something inside her whispered, "Don't." She lifted her chin. "I'd like to verify my signature in the back," she said. In that small copy room that smelled of toner and fear, the notary pointed to the first line on the paper. Grantor conveys all right, title, and interest. It meant her home, her memories, her life. The woman felt her heartbeat steady. "Then I'm not signing," she said. When she walked back into the bright store, the air changed, like truth entering a room. "Please stop calling me confused," she told them. "It's my house." That one sentence would save everything she loved, because this story isn't about a signature. It's about the day an old woman learned that no can be the most powerful word in the world. Rewind 10 minutes. Her phone had buzzed over a half-finished grocery list, and that's where everything began. I was halfway through writing my grocery list, eggs, coffee, dry cat food, even though the cat's been gone a year, when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Alyssa's face popped up with a sparkly filter and a peace sign, the way she always took selfies, one shoulder up like a fashion ad. "Aunt Marion, quick errand before lunch. Just a simple form at the UPS store. Derek says it'll help with taxes." Simple, quick, help. Those were Alyssa's favorite words. I checked the time on the stove, 11:07. My stomach clenched in that old, reliable way it does around noon, as if it's trained to expect someone else's emergency. "Bring the papers here," I texted back. She replied with a stream of hearts and a pin drop to the UPS store on Riverbend. "We'll be in and out, promise." I looked around my kitchen. The paint around the window over the sink was yellowing. The little hummingbird feeder hanging outside needed a scrub. The little note I kept on the fridge in Ray's writing, "Don't forget, gas card, dog treats, kiss my wife," still makes my throat go tight 3 years later, every time I see it. I touched the corner like it was a worry stone. Then I grabbed my purse and my cane, the aluminum one with the faded purple flowers, and took a slow breath. Simple, quick help. The UPS store smelled like cardboard and tape and a little bit like someone's lunch. The air conditioner was working overtime, a printer whirred in the back. 2 high schoolers were arguing over a shipping label. A woman in scrubs was juggling 3 pre-stamped packages. Everything looked ordinary by design. Alyssa waved when I came in, her smile turned up too high. "There she is," she sang, like we were arriving at a party. "Aunt Marion, this is just a little thing Derek needs to help with your property taxes. It's all confusing, and you know paperwork isn't your favorite." Derek nodded once, the way a man nods when he's already decided something. He wears a realtor polo so tight it makes my shoulders tense just looking at it. He had the clipboard in his hand, papers clipped under it, and a pen with a fluffy top like a joke that doesn't land. He laid it gently on the counter with the pen facing me like a fork turned toward a cake. Granted, he said casually, like we were discussing weather, it just tidies up title, puts us in a position to help if anything comes up. Fall risk, hospital bills, probate. This keeps it simple. He nudged the pen closer to my hand. A notary stepped out from behind the counter. She was mid-30s, a neat bun, a name tag that said Jade Garcia. She had kind eyes and a face you want to tell the truth to. "Hi there, Miss Cole," she said. "I'll need your ID and I'll ask a couple standard questions." Derek slid my license across like an eager dog dropping a ball you never threw. Alyssa leaned a hip against the counter, a smile programmed for people watching. Jade glanced down at the document, then up at me. "Do you understand what this document does?" she asked, voice steady. "Taxes," Derek answered, too quickly. Jade didn't look at him. "I'm asking Miss Cole." I swallowed. The top line leaped out at me in big block letters. Grantor conveys all right, title, and interest. All. All the azaleas Ray planted, the way the light hits the east wall in the late afternoon, the quilt room where I keep his fishing hat and the Christmas ornaments from before my hair went gray. All right, title, and interest in the house he and I chose when we were still making lists for the future like it was a grocery run. All. Behind the counter was a little blue poster, laminated and neatly tacked up. Notary safety check. We must confirm you're signing willingly. If you need a private conversation, say, "I'd like to verify my signature in the back." It felt like the poster turned itself toward me, like it took a step forward. I heard my own heartbeat, slow and heavy in my ears. "I'd like to verify my signature in the back," I said. My voice surprised me by sounding normal. Derek laughed. "She's fine." Jade smiled, professional. "Actually, that's a standard option and a good one. Miss Cole, would you follow me?" She led me through a little door into a small copy room that smelled like warm toner and citrus cleaner. I could hear the murmur of the store through the door. "Are you under any pressure to sign this?" she asked quietly. "If you are, we can stop here." I looked down at the deed in my hands. The words were a blizzard. I felt 24 and 74 at the same time. Ray would have frowned at the first line and said, "Let's take it home and read it over coffee." Ray would have been here with me. The ache in my chest was a physical thing. I told them it was for taxes. He keeps saying I'll end up in a nursing home and Alyssa will be stuck if I don't let them help. Jade turned the paper back to the first page and tapped the heading with her finger. "This is a quitclaim deed. If you sign it, you'd be transferring your ownership interest to them. You'd have no legal rights to the property unless they transfer it back. That's a big decision. It's not for taxes. If you're not comfortable, you do not have to sign it, and I won't notarize it if you don't want to." Something in my spine unwound and stood up at the same time. "I don't want to sign." "Okay," she said. "I'll tell them we won't proceed. Would you like me to call someone for you? We can contact Adult Protective Services or a non-emergency officer if you feel unsafe. Or is there a family member you trust?" I thought of my sister's voice, sharp and tired. I thought of the neighbor who nods from his riding mower. I thought of Ray, which is unfair because dead men can't answer phones. "I think I'm okay," I said. Would you stay while I tell them?" We stepped back into the bright store. The air felt thinner. "Everything good?" Alyssa asked, wide-eyed. Jade set the clipboard down. "We won't be notarizing today. Miss Cole has declined to sign." Alyssa's smile crumpled at the edges like a paper cup. "Aunt Marion, did you misread? It's normal paperwork. Derek said..." "I'm not signing. And please stop telling people I'm confused." Derek's jaw tightened. He pinched the clipboard like it owed him money. "Don't make a scene," he said under his breath. The manager appeared as if summoned by a bell I didn't hear. He took in the papers, my cane, Jade's stance, and drifted to stand at the end of the counter within polite earshot. There are people who know when to stand close. It's a form of kindness. "Aunt Marion," said Alyssa softly, a note of pleading now, "we're just trying to protect you. You know how the county is with older folks. They milk fees and taxes, and you're not protecting me by taking my house." My voice shook only at the end. Derek leaned in, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something sharp and expensive. "Look, you're 70, houses are work, the market's weird. We're just positioning things so if..." "I'm 69, I cut in, "and I prefer things hard to steal." Jade's mouth twitched, which I took as a laugh she swallowed because she was at work. "We're done.
Derek said to Jade, like he was buying a shirt and the cashier refused to rent him up. "You'll be hearing from us." The manager's eyebrows lifted a fraction. "Sir, please lower your voice," he said. Then to me, "Ma'am, can I walk you to your car?"
I nodded. My legs remembered they were human. Alyssa and Derek left first, their frustration visible even in the set of their shoulders. The parking lot was a white sheet of heat. I got into my Camry and closed the door, and the air felt too small. I clutched the steering wheel with both hands and let the cry come. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't cinematic. It was a full-bodied, hiccuping, red-faced release that left me empty and clean. When it was done, I wiped my eyes with a napkin from the glove compartment and took 3 slow breaths, the way the nurse at Dr. Patel's office taught me when the blood pressure cuff is too tight. On the passenger seat, Jade had placed a small stack of trifold brochures held together with a paperclip. Senior Services of Maple County. The Legal Aid Clinic at Maple County Senior Center. Adult Protective Services, recognizing and reporting financial exploitation. Her card was on top. A handwritten note scrawled at the bottom. "You did the brave thing. Call if you need a witness or friend. Jade." I sat there until my breathing evened out. Then I drove home and put the phone in the bread box like it was 1998 and I could choose not to be reached. By dinner, my phone was a slot machine. Text bloomed across the screen in a staccato of dings. "You're being paranoid. Derek says your memory's slipping. We just wanted to save you money. Sawyer's Crown is $400. You always said you'd be there." I set the phone deeper in the bread box and turned up the Reds game on the radio until Marty Brannaman's replacement became white noise. I baked the meatloaf because meatloaf doesn't ask questions. I slept in Ray's old flannel shirt and dreamed about being in a field where all the grass is receipts. The next morning, I drove to the senior center with a coffee and a church foam cup and my folder of papers. The parking lot was mostly Buicks and Fords, the kind of cars our generation buys when we've decided we're done with drama. Inside, a volunteer with a name tag that said Etna handed me a clipboard and a pen that wasn't trying to sell me anything. She said the Legal Aid Clinic is down the hall, last door on the left. "Do you have your property records and ID? Good. If you didn't, we'd give you a cookie anyway." The legal aid room looked like a third-grade classroom we purposed for grown-ups. There were posters about wills and a table with hard candies that might be older than some of the clients. A woman with soft eyes and sensible shoes stood to greet me. "I'm Harriet Bloom. What brings you in?" I told her everything in the slow, halting way people tell something once they decide to stop editing it. Derek's tight smile, Alyssa's sweet voice, the blue poster, the room in the back that smelt like paper, the words on the deed that had the power of a gun if I signed them. Harriet listened without interrupting, except to ask a clarifying question here and there. When I finished, she put a finger on the deed and slid it back toward me. She said, "You did the right thing. Here's what we'll do. First, we'll draft a letter to file with the county recorder, no solicitation of deeds, to put on record that you've been pressured to transfer. It doesn't have legal teeth by itself, but it waves a flag for clerks if anything questionable shows up. Second, we'll talk about a transfer on death designation, so your house goes where you want when you're gone, with you keeping full control now. Third, we'll discuss whether you want a financial power of attorney, but one you appoint to someone you trust with limits you choose. And we'll update your will." "I don't have a lot," I said, embarrassed. It sounded small out loud. She said, "You have the roof over your head and the right to live under it in peace. That's not small." She leaned forward, voice a little softer. "Would you like to talk to Adult Protective Services? What you're describing is a form of coercion, and it's okay to get help. Sometimes a social worker call takes the pressure off you because you're not the one saying no. It's the agency." I swallowed. My knee bounced under the table. "I don't want Alyssa in trouble," I said. The words tasted like a lie and a truth at the same time. She's my sister's baby. I held her when she was 6 pounds and 4 ounces. She had a cowlick that made everyone laugh. Harriet nodded. We can do it in a way that focuses on support and boundaries, not punishment. Also, do you have people? Church, neighbors, a club? I go to Maple Road Baptist. I leave before the social coffee. Habit. Stayed this week. Let people know your name. It's easier to say no when you're not doing it alone. We filled out forms. Harriet's pen scratched at the right volume. She explained each line and waited for me to nod. It was like being in a boat with someone who knows which current to ride. When I left, I had a folder thicker than the one I arrived with, and a paper schedule with support group, family boundaries, Tuesdays, 6 p.m., library room B, circled in purple. I drove home the long way past the high school where Ray taught shop. The flags out front moved in a small wind. The first call came at dinner time. Alyssa's contact photo lit up my upstairs hallway.
You embarrassed us, she said, without preamble. At the store, in front of a girl who probably makes $12 an hour. She's not the law. I didn't ask her to be, I said. I asked her to be a notary. Derek says you're not thinking straight. You forget words. You repeat stories. Maybe I repeat them because you don't hear me, I said. My voice shook. I hate when it does that, not because it betrays me, because it sounds like I need permission to be firm. She hung up, then texted immediately. Sawyer's crown. He can't chew on one side. Please pick up the bill. You know how it was with me when Mom couldn't. I typed, then deleted. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard like birds on a wire. I put the phone face down and went to bed. In the morning, I still hadn't replied. The world didn't end. The dent in my chest didn't go away either, but it felt like a dent from something I moved, not something that hit me. Sunday, I stayed for coffee after church. The coffee was terrible in that comforting way church coffee is terrible, burnt and thin. I stood by the bulletin board and looked at pictures of the mission trip and the last potluck. A woman in a crocheted sweater approached like you approach a stray cat. Friendly, no sudden moves. Marian, she said, you've been slipping out fast. I'm Nora. I run the nursery on Wednesdays. I used to work the craft table before COVID. I have a few glue gun scars if that's a membership requirement. Nora laughed. It wasn't loud, but it was real. We line dance at the rec center on Wednesdays. It's more shuffling than dancing, but we laugh and no one films us. You should come. I told her I'd think about it. On the way home, I did not stop for a 12-pack of Mountain Dew for Alyssa, which felt like a sin in one part of my brain and proper in the other. I realized how much of me was practiced at anticipating someone else's ask. Tuesday evening, I sat in library room B under a poster of a cat reading a book and listened to strangers say things I thought only belonged in my head. A man with a kind mustache said his daughter tells him he doesn't love her because he won't co-sign her third car lease. A woman 3 seats down said her son threatened to withhold the grandkids if she doesn't help this one last time. The group leader, a social worker named Sandra, said, boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. When it was my turn, I talked about Alyssa's cowlick and the time her tooth fell out in my hand and the quitclaim deed. I talked about Ray and his fishing hat and the way grief makes you do math out loud at 3 a.m. I talked about a UPS store and a blue poster. No one looked surprised. They looked like people watching someone else rescue themselves. After group, Sandra handed me a sheet with statements I could use like flashcards. No. No, thank you. I'm not available for that. I love you and I'm not giving you money. I'll always be your aunt. I won't be your bank. Write it out, she said. Put it by your phone. 2 weeks later, there was a clue I would think about for months. At the Maple Ridge Diner, a place where the pie case glows like a shrine, I ate a grilled cheese and watched the regulars. Mr. Kingsley from down the block ordered meatloaf. High school kids in matching jackets split a basket of fries. As I got up to pay, I saw Derek at a corner table, leaning toward a man in a polo shirt with the county recorder's logo, the name tag clipped on his pocket like he'd forgotten to remove it after work. Derek rotated his phone so the other man could see the screen. Even upside down, I recognized the picture. My house, my front stoop, my azaleas trying hard in clay soil. Derek was talking with the intensity of someone who hopes his words become facts. I tried to step past, but caught 5 words anyway. Get her to sign the rest was swallowed by the music, Fleetwood Mac and Fort Clinks. My heart revved, a car in too low a gear. Next to the register, a small sticker by the napkin holder caught my eye. If you feel unsafe, tell your server you'd like the free peach pie box. I waited until my waitress returned. Could I get the free peach pie box? I asked. I said it like a joke I didn't find funny. Her eyes flicked to the manager, then back to me. Absolutely, she said. In less than a minute, the manager, a sturdy man with a calm mouth, walked me out to my car. He offered to note Derek's license plate, and he said he knew Officer Raines from Rotary. He said, "We see things. We're not lawyers, but we notice." I drove home with my hands at 10 and 2 like a teenager. When I pulled into the driveway, I sat in the car and watched the front porch for a long minute like it was going to sprout teeth. That evening, there was a knock on my door at dinner time. A plainclothes officer with kind shoulders stood there with a business card.
"Mrs. Cole?" he asked. "I'm Officer Raines, Maple Police. The diner let me know there might be an issue with someone trying to influence you to sign legal documents. I'm not here to scare you, but if anyone shows up with paperwork, especially if they call it a simple medical form, call us. Also, Adult Protective Services asked me to drop off this." He handed me a slim booklet. "Protecting Your Choices, a guide to preventing financial exploitation." "I don't want to get anyone in trouble," I said automatically, because women my age are trained to say that sentence even to our own detriment. "Then think of this as getting you out of trouble," he said. "That house is yours. So are your decisions." He left his card on the hall table next to the photo of Ray in his fishing hat and my son Andrew on his wedding day. Andrew lives 3 states away, with the kind of job that means his phone is always low on battery. I love him. I don't bother him with every storm cloud over Ohio. Not a week later, the storm cloud arrived at my door in the form of a woman with perfect eyebrows and a messenger bag. "Mobile notary," she chirped. "Here to witness a medical power of attorney signing. Mr. Vaughn said you'd be expecting me." Behind her, at the curb, Derek sat in his SUV. He waved like a neighbor. My mouth went dry. "I'm not expecting you, and I won't be signing anything today." "Oh, this is simple medical paperwork," she said, already opening the bag. I glanced back at my kitchen counter where the booklet from APS lay open. Simple was in quotation marks on the list of common pressure phrases. Something in me unclenched fast and forever. "No," I said. "No, thank you. Please leave my property. If you don't, I'll call Officer Raines." The notary blinked, then glanced over her shoulder at Derek. He threw up a hand in frustration and put the car in gear. The woman apologized and retreated, her perfect eyebrows drawn together. I closed my door and locked it. Then I leaned against it and shook until I laughed because my body is still figuring out what to do when it makes a good decision. Ray isn't here to witness this. I say that out loud sometimes so it doesn't choke me from inside. The week after, I did something that would have made me roll my eyes 2 years ago. I adopted a beagle from the shelter. He's white and brown with gray dusting his black ears, a gentleman's dog, one eye cloudy from age. The worker at the shelter said his name was Max. I renamed him Buddy because it felt right to say, "Come on, Buddy," into an empty house that wasn't empty anymore. Buddy follows me like I might turn into steak if he blinks. He snores like a grown man. He likes the sound of the coffee grinder and the clink of my spoon against the side of my mug. He's some combination of old and grateful I didn't know I needed as a roommate. The texts from Alyssa slowed, then stopped. Then they started again like a faucet turned back on. She asked about Sawyer's field trip money. She hinted at the salon being slow. She sent a picture of a past due electric bill with, "This is humiliating, but I know you're not like other aunts." I closed my eyes and put my thumbs on the flashcards Sandra gave me. No, thank you. I'm not available for that. I love you, and I'm not giving you money. I texted, Sawyer can always come for dinner. I won't discuss money. I put my phone back in the bread box. Buddy thumped his tail once like a small gavel. Case closed. Winter came on like it always does, too proud to knock. I learned the satisfying rhythm of doing for myself again. The shoveling of a small walkway, the paying of bills on the first of the month, the calling the HVAC man before the heat dies on the coldest night. On Wednesdays, I went to line dancing and laughed when my hips tried to remember 19. On Sundays, I stayed for coffee after church and didn't pretend to be in a hurry. I put a lamp in the front window on a timer so the house looked warm when I came home. I slept through the night 3 nights in a row and woke up feeling like 40. In March, I filed papers at the county courthouse with a clerk who had a nose ring and called me ma'am like it wasn't a sentence but a benediction. I told Harriet at the clinic what I'd done. She said, "You're building a fence that keeps you safe and still lets love in. That's the whole project." Spring brought robins and pollen and the first phone call from a number I didn't recognize that I answered anyway. My voice still tries to be agreeable even when my bones say it doesn't have to. "Aunt Marion?" "Alyssa." Her voice was smaller than I remembered. The sound hung between us like laundry line on a windless day. I shouldn't have called. I didn't know who else. I leaned against the counter. Buddy rested his chin on my foot. "What's going on?" I asked. She was quiet long enough that I thought the call dropped. Then she exhaled all at once. "Nothing dramatic, just, it's hard. The salon is slow again, Sawyer needs new cleats, and the dentist says the crown can't wait, and Derek," she stopped herself. "Start again. We had a fight. He says I'm ungrateful. He says if I had handled you better, we'd be set. I don't even know what that means. I keep thinking about the UPS store and how you looked at me like someone you didn't recognize." I sipped cold coffee. It tasted like the truth. Less sweet than you want, more bracing than you choose. "I looked at you like someone I love," I said. And I looked at myself like someone who forgot love needs a fence. "I miss how it used to be," she said, the voice of a girl who got too used to cake. "I don't," I said softly, "but I miss you." Silence again, then a laugh that was half a sob. That sounds like a line from a book. It's a line from the middle of my life. She came by 2 days later. No Derek, no demand. She brought paper plates and half a watermelon cut the wrong way. She stood on my porch like a Girl Scout. I let her in. "Aunt Marion," she said as soon as we sat, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I made you feel crazy. I'm sorry I told Sawyer you didn't care when you didn't do what I wanted. I'm sorry I said just sign when I knew it wasn't just anything." She twisted a napkin in her hands until it was a rope. "I got used to you as a solution, and when you stopped, I didn't know what to do with the hard feelings. I got mean." Buddy put his head in her lap. "He gives forgiveness freely. People have to earn it." I poured us sweet tea like my mother used to. The ice cracked as it hit the glass. It felt like a sound a door makes when it finally opens. "I'm sorry too," I said. "I'm sorry I taught you I would fix it. I'm sorry I didn't say no sooner. It wasn't fair to you either. Was Derek right about nursing homes, about you being alone?"
I thought of the women at line dancing, the man at Rotary who always tells a joke that takes too long, the cashier at Kroger who calls me Miss Marion like I'm about to take the stage. I thought of Jade's steady eyes and Harriet's soft hands and Officer Raines' card on my hall table. I thought of Buddy's warm weight on my feet when it storms. I'm not alone. I'm home. She cried again. The nice kind, the kind that empties and fills at the same time. We ate watermelon and let the juice run to our wrists. We talked about Sawyer's science project and how 5th grade is basically a preteen rave, and how sometimes you fall into a life where you do what looks easy. When she left, she hugged me long and hard. At the door, she looked back like she wanted to say something more. She didn't. She waved. I waved. A slice of ordinary lodged itself in the house like a song. The next week brought a letter from the county recorder, form letter font, polite as a handshake, confirming the no solicitation flag on my title and the transfer on death I'd filed. If anyone presented documents involving my property, the office would verify identity and intent by phone with me and me alone, regardless of who brought the paper. It felt like a lock installed on a door I didn't know was open. I stapled the letter to my folder and slept better than I had since Ray's last day. Summer stretched wide. Sawyer came over on Fridays. We made lasagna. He chopped things with a butter knife and declared himself a chef. We sat in the backyard with popsicles and pretended to rate the sunset. 10 out of 10, would watch again. He told me about the kid in his class who said library like library, and I told him that words are living things that sometimes change their clothes. I did not buy him cleats. He wore last year's to practice and ran as fast as ever because children are not made of gear. In August, at the rummage sale at church, I stacked dishware on a folding table and sold 2 old mixers to a man who seemed like the type to have strong opinions about cake. Alyssa worked the door and did not ask me for change for a 20. She showed me a picture of Sawyer's team in their mismatched uniforms. We laughed at the kid in giant shorts who looks like someone shrunk him with a ray gun. We did not talk about Derek. He solved that for us. One Tuesday evening, as the group at the library let out, he was waiting in the parking lot by a black SUV that gleamed like it had never seen a gravel road. He leaned against the door with a posture meant to read as relaxed, but probably tight in the lower back.
"You think you won," he said as I approached. No hello. "I think I kept my house," I said. "You turned Alyssa against me," he said. "You turned everyone at county against me. Even that notary was looking down her nose." I could have said a lot of things. I could have said, "You did that yourself." I could have said, "You tried to sign your name on my life." I could have said, "I have outlived the need to make a man like me." Instead, I let my silence sit between us like a park bench. He pushed himself off the car and took 2 steps toward me. That would have scared me 6 months ago. Now, without thinking, I lifted my phone and tapped Officer Raines' number. Derek saw exactly what I did. He stopped. He stepped back. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice had that brittle edge of a threat delivered past its expiration date. "It is for me," I said. "Go home." He left. I stood there in the dusk, the cricket chorus loud as applause. I felt the fear power down inside me like a device I finally found the off switch for. A week later, at the market, I ran into Jade in the produce section. She was reaching for tomatoes like she knew the good ones by touch. She turned, saw me, and her face widened into a smile that looked exactly like a friend's. "Miss Cole," she said, "how are you?" "Still not signing other people's deeds," I said. We laughed. I reached into my purse and pulled out a Polaroid of Buddy I keep next to my Aldi quarter. "This is Buddy." She showed me a picture on her phone of a toddler covered in blueberries. "This is Mia. She eats like she owes the blueberries money." In the way of women over produce, we exchanged small slices of life while testing peaches. I went home with tomatoes and peaches and a sense that good strangers are sometimes just future neighbors. Summer flicked to fall like someone flipped a calendar page, the air suddenly polite instead of swampy. Sawyer's baseball season started. I sat on metal bleachers and learned to yell the right amount. Not like the dad with the neck vein who thinks yelling will build character by osmosis. Like a woman who loves a boy's grin when he steals second because the throw was too high. On the second game, Alyssa waved from the concession stand. Her visor was crooked. There was sauce on her elbow. She looked like a woman in a life she was choosing on purpose instead of falling into. We weren't healed like a Hallmark movie. We were two people who decided to stop making one person hold both ends of a rope. 2 summers later, I sat on a similar bleacher and felt older in the way your ankles remind you. Sawyer was taller, voice half an octave lower already, the nap of childhood rubbing thinner at the edges. Alyssa ran the volunteer schedule with a clipboard and the authority of someone who survived herself. I brought a cooler with water and oranges because it felt like a holy thing to do. A woman slid onto the bench next to me. She had a sun hat and a nurse's badge on a lanyard. She nodded toward Sawyer. "Your grandson?" she asked. "Nephew," I said, then added, "Mine by heart." We watched the foul ball arc against a sky so blue you'd call it fake in a movie. The boy who caught it looked like he wanted to do a victory lap. The coach stopped him mid-lap with a shake of his head and a grin. Learning when to celebrate is a skill. Between innings, Sawyer looked up toward the bleachers to see if I saw what he did. I saw. I lifted my Gatorade in a small salute. He nodded, a small royalty, then turned his cap and set his stance. On the drive home, Buddy snored in the back seat. The azaleas out front of my house needed trimming. The kitchen light over the sink hummed, and I made a mental note to get a new bulb. I pulled into my driveway and sat for a minute, hands loose on the wheel, grateful for the size of an ordinary day built on decisions I made myself. There are 100 ways to measure life. How many casseroles in your freezer, how many names in your phone, how many times you drive to the courthouse to sign your name for your own future, how many times you say no and survive the echo. Years ago, Ray and I watched a news story about scams targeting older folks. He put his hand on my knee and said, "If anyone ever tries to rush you, say you gotta pee. That buys you time." I laughed then. It sounded crude and ridiculous, but what he meant was, you don't owe anyone speed. You don't owe anyone ease. I think of that at the sink sometimes. I look out the window past the hummingbird feeder and I say out loud, I don't owe you speed. It sounds like prayer and policy at once. It keeps my spine straight. The invitation to the high school's Veterans Day breakfast arrived one October in a white envelope. Ray's name is still on their list, even though he's gone. They invite me anyway because he liked the pancakes and told the same story about the motor pool every year. I went. I wore his watch, even though it's loose on my wrist and stops at 2:14. At the breakfast, I sat with 3 other women who had loved men who saluted. We traded stories like recipes. One of them, a little bird of a person with arthritis knots on her fingers, said her grandson asked her for light bill money every month. She tells him I love him, she said, cutting her pancake slowly. I also tell him I can't keep paying for a life I'm not living. He thinks I'm mean. I think I'm honest. Honesty tastes like black coffee at 7 in the morning, bitter by itself, perfect with something warm beside it. I drove home thinking about truth as a daily habit. You make the bed, you make the call, you tell the truth, you keep the house, you keep the boundary, you keep the people who meet you at the fence. Near Christmas, a card arrived from Jade. It had a picture of her daughter sitting in a pile of ornaments looking too pleased with herself. Inside she wrote, "Thank you for reminding me why this job matters. Merry Christmas from someone who will always give you extra stamps when you forget." I put the card on the mantle next to one from Harriet with a watercolor of the courthouse. Some people we meet once, some people we meet again by mail. On New Year's Day, I stood on my front step with Buddy and watched the neighborhood try to keep their resolutions in sweatshirts. Mr. Kinsey shuffled by and raised his hand. A young couple from 2 blocks over jogged in place while their dog pooped in the strip of grass between sidewalk and street. I waved anyway. The world is a quilt of people doing their best in public. Inside, I wrote a list of things I had learned that year on an index card and taped it to my fridge next to Ray's note.
You can say no kindly. If someone rushes you, stall. If someone calls you paranoid, ask who benefits from your confusion. Love is showing up, not paying up. A boundary is a fence you put up to keep your garden alive. By spring, the azaleas bloomed so aggressively it looked like they were apologizing for years of underperforming. I cut them back with a determination that felt like therapy. I dropped the clippings at the curb and chatted with a woman who uses one of those collapsible carts for her groceries. She asked me about the dog. I told her Buddy's backstory like he was a war hero. Every joy has a narrative. It helps to tell it. That summer, Alyssa and I volunteered together at the county fair for the pie contest. We wore aprons that made us look like people who know how to judge pie on sight. She leaned in at one point, voice low. "Thank you for not shoving my nose in it," she said. "In what?" I asked. "In how dumb I was." She rolled her eyes at herself. "In how hungry I was for it to be easy." I shrugged. I was hungry for it to be easy too. That's why I kept feeding it. She smiled, small and sad. "Derek moved to Florida," she said, like she was telling me a weather update. "He texts sometimes. It's a lot about how he's thriving." I wish him exactly the amount of good he earned, which is to say, the world is big and we don't need to hear about it. We tasted pies and judged them with a gravity that would embarrass us anywhere but a county fair. We gave first place to a woman who cried like she'd won the lottery. Maybe she had. Maybe the day you feel seen for a thing you made is the day that pays for a winter you almost didn't get through. Sometimes I drive by the UPS store and sit in the lot for a minute. It looks the same. The sign is a little faded. The kids who argued about the label are not kids anymore. Inside, someone is signing something ordinary. It is a place built for errands, not epiphanies. But a blue poster still hangs behind the counter, laminated and a little curled at the edges. I hope hundreds of people read it and use it like a key. I'd like to verify my signature in the back and walk into a small room that smells like paper and the future. On a Tuesday in late fall, Sandra asked me to speak to the group. She said, "Tell the new folks what it felt like. Start with the day at the store." I told them. I kept my voice steady. I explained the deed in a sentence because now I can. I described the copy room and the silent bell that brought the manager and the lilt in Derek's voice when he tried to slip a hook through a kind word. I said the 2 sentences that keep me upright. "It's my house," and "no" is a complete sentence. A man at the end of the row wiped his eyes with a sleeve and said, "I wish my mother had you in her ear." I thought about my own mother, who papered over conflict with biscuits and calls everything fine until it's on fire. I thought about how we inherit recipes and reflexes. We keep the ones that feed us. I went home and made biscuits. Buddy watched, ears perked like he could will one to the floor with focus. I dropped one on purpose. He pretended not to notice and then pounced like he'd outsmarted fate. I laughed out loud, a full laugh that reached the ceiling. When winter came again, I hung a wreath on the door and watched the neighborhood through a gap in the curtain, the way grandmothers in movies do. It was dark at 5, and my living room was a poem of lamplight. I am my own story now, I thought. stirring soup, the way one thinks a thought you mutter to no one and everyone at once. One Friday night, Andrew called. He doesn't call as much as he should, which is the most universal sentence in America. "Mom, I got your Christmas card with the dog picture. He looks like a tax auditor." I said, "He snores like a rhythm section." "How are you?" "We're good," he said. "Claire's mom might move closer. We're thinking about school zones already. It's like a disease." "Be kind to yourself," I said. "Everyone wants the best field for their kids to run on." There was a pause. "Claire said her aunt had someone try to get her to sign a deed. It made me think of you. I'm sorry I wasn't there more." I said, "You are starting your own house. You don't owe me backward time." "I owe you a visit," he said. "We'll come in March, maybe catch a Reds spring training game." He laughed. "Not in Ohio, I know. We'll watch on TV." "I'll make lasagna. Bring me the grandchild I don't have yet, and I'll buy them a pony."
"Please don't buy a pony," he said, and for a moment the little boy who slept with a flashlight under his pillow so he could read comics pretended to be stern. "Love you, Mom. Love you more," I said, reflex and truth at once. I hung up and stood in the quiet of my house with the kind of fullness that makes you understand why people cry at weddings. The next day, I put on my coat and walked Buddy down Maple Lane, past houses that look like mine and lives that do too. I waved at people I knew and people I didn't. The street dips slightly before the stop sign, and Buddy always looks back at me like, "You got this?" I did. I do. The world is full of paper that wants your name. Mail, contracts, petitions, cards promising gift cards if you'll just share a little bit more than you should. I look at the paper, then look at my hand. The pen is a small thing with a big job. The hand is a miracle I forget to thank. I sign the things that feed the life I'm in. I leave the rest on the counter until the trash goes out. If you ask me what the moral is, I'll tell you I'm not interested in morals as lessons pinned to a board. I'm interested in living like my house, bricks lined up, mortar strong, a light on in the window so the people I love can find the door. I don't have to set myself on fire to keep anyone warm. I keep the heat on. I keep a blanket. I keep the boundary. Love sits on the couch and eats popcorn and doesn't ask me for the deed. If you ask me what I learned, it's that the word no can be said like a prayer. It can be set like a period instead of a comma. It can be said over the phone with a bread box door closed and a dog sighing at your feet. It can be said in a diner where the pies are better than they have to be. It can be said in a courthouse with a clerk who calls you ma'am like a blessing. It can be said on a bleacher at a baseball game where a boy looks up to see if you saw him do something hard. He did. You did. On the last day of school this year, Sawyer rang my bell and shouted through the screen door before I could get there. "Aunt Marian, I got second in the science fair. I made a bridge out of spaghetti. It held books." I opened the door. He stood there taller, feet in sneakers too big already, the colors loud. His hair was longer. The cowlick still does its thing. He held the certificate like a royal decree. "Deep breaths," I said. "Tell me everything." We sat at the kitchen table eating orange slices like people in a commercial for a life that doesn't exist and yet somehow does. He explained load distribution with hand gestures that could fly an airplane. I nodded, then got serious the way an aunt does when she's about to deliver both comfort and truth. "You know how bridges don't fall down, Sawyer?" I asked. "It's not because they never face a heavy truck. It's because they were built with tension in mind. They flex where they're supposed to. They refuse what would break them." He looked at me with the bewildered patience of a boy who loves and endures metaphors. "So you're the bridge," he said slowly. "I'm the lady who learned to say no to the truck, which means you always have a place to come where the lights are on." He nodded like that made sense in his own vocabulary. He put his sticky hand on mine. "I'm glad you didn't sign," he said in that clear end-of-episode voice children sometimes have when they punch you in the heart without meaning to. I too. Then we made lasagna. We ate it on paper plates at the counter with Buddy lying at our feet like a living rug. The evening light slid across the floorboards the way it does when the world is exactly the size a person can hold. Before bed, I walked through the house and turned off lamps. I looked at Ray's watch on the dresser, stopped at 2:14 as always, a tiny monument to a minute that will never come back. I patted it, a silly habit. I brushed my teeth and told my face in the mirror that I forgave it for getting older. I turned down the covers and slid into sheets that smell like detergent and sleep. I listened to the refrigerator hum and Buddy snore and my own breath make a rhythm that sounded like the answer to a question I'd been asking for 20 years. How do I live if I'm not fixing someone else's life? Like this. Like this. Like this.